How's it going, everyone? This is Vince with On to the Next podcast. This is episode 12, and I'm actually out here in Colorado visiting some family and friends. But speaking of friends, I got one of my best this episode, Carlos Luna, and this is such a fun episode. I can't wait for you guys to listen to this one. This is On to the Next.
It's been a long time coming. They ain't cuffing my cloth, they tugging it. Putting up numbers, 99 problems, and I still kept it 100. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. They ain't cuffing my cloth, they tugging it.
Carlos, what is up, man? How you doing?
Yo. Doing good, brother. Doing good. Just plugging away, as they say.
Yeah, man, I totally hear you. I was like, it's funny because I have an order of guests lined up on the show, and you kind of were a designated hitter on this one because you were supposed to be later on down the road, but we won't mention any names who took off on me, but you're definitely a great designated hitter for this one, and I guarantee you'll hit it out of the park, though, right?
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I actually was really looking forward to being on the podcast. I've watched certainly every episode that you've put out. So I'm a big fan. I think you're putting out amazing content. I think the stories that you're going through are truly inspirational, man. Like you're finding, the humanity in a lot of different ugly situations. And the byproduct of that is that people that are watching your channel are really seeing that there's really nothing that can keep people down, right? If you have a resilient mindset, if you have a positive outlook, and certainly if you're a person of prayer, right, things tend to work out for the better, man. So, cheers to you for doing such a great job curating great content for everybody to watch. I think it's great.
Yeah, and it's funny because I'm like I've said it before, like I feel like, man, I suck at this, but it's always good having really good people to kind of just give me that balance. But I feel like I'm getting the hang of it, So
Yeah, dude. You know what? It comes across authentic. One of the things that I struggle with is coming across a bit too polished and a bit too rehearsed, too scripted. And so I love the feel of your podcast because it's very conversational. It's very authentic. It's very everyday, right? It's real.
yeah.
And I think that there's a certain power to that, man. So I wouldn't change a thing if I were you.
Well, I grabbed my Coke Zero today, and it's kind of fitting, right? Where's my? Can you see it? Put the light.
What does it say?
Oh,
Nice.
friend.
Nice. Love it.
But because everybody, if you don't know, for some reason the names aren't on the bottom, but everybody knows this guy. This is Carlos. This is Carlos, one of my best friends for over 40 years, and man, we're just gonna dive into some of our lifetime experiences together because there's no other way better. I mean, we do it on the Kings of Monaco with the four of us. If you don't know Kings of Monaco, there's Joe and LeBeau and my boy Carlos here, but there's no better way of just we talk on the phone, but these are always fun for me because the Kings of Monaco is fun, but I know this is going to be a fun conversation because I mean we've known each other forever. We've been through like some crazy times together, and
we've gone on a lot of double dates together too,
dude. yeah. Those are some those are some fun times, and we've had a lot of great times together, and I always like to, for one, we just talked a couple days ago, and so it's like I always ask people how they're doing lately because a lot of these people I don't talk to for a while, but I'm like, I feel like I talk to you. I feel like I see you too much sometimes.
Jerk.
Just joking. No.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't feel that way about your homies, are you really doing it right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like sometimes if you're not getting tired of the people that you care about, are you really spending enough time together? So I can say the feeling is mutual. You get me sick sometimes.
So yeah, bro. I you know what's funny is so this is gonna air next Monday. So there's one thing we could talk about because we're gonna see each other this weekend. And
Yes.
it's
Okay.
this weekend is actually the past. So um speaking of the person who dissed me on this episode, it was supposed to be LeBeau because
Oh man, what a jerk.
LeBeau's birthday is coming up, and if since this is gonna post on the 4th, his birthday's on the 1st of May. And it was kind of a thing that we were gonna do. Both of our birthdays are in May, so I thought it would be cool to kick off, but he's like, "Oh, I got other stuff to do." So LeBeau's an important guy.
He
So
really is, man. He's like the mayor, dude. He's like requested at a lot of different places, man. He's got
yeah,
stuff to do, people to see, babies to kiss. So I totally get it.
dude, that guy's too much. But yeah, we're uh next time I'll talk about our great weekend, maybe post some pictures and stuff on the cast because um it's gonna be good seeing you guys. We're gonna play some
Dude,
golf.
yeah,
Yeah.
without a doubt. I'm still a bit sore with you about the last time you came into town. You didn't even hit a brother up. You didn't hit any of the brothers up for that matter. You came
What?
in.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
dude.
yeah.
You came
Yeah.
in, you didn't tell anybody you were in town. You like went and did your thing. And then you told us after the fact that you were in town. I was like, what the hell, dude? But
Dude,
I totally get it.
yeah, that
So
was literally what are you talking about? You've done that coming out to Florida. You're like,
yeah,
"Oh, yeah, I'm in
well,
town." And I'm like, "Well, hey, let's get together tonight." "Nah, I can't do it tonight. Maybe another night. I got other
it's
things to
because I
do."
usually go out to Florida like when I'm working, dude. In fact, the last time I was in Florida, we were in St. Pete. The family was there, but I was there legitimately for business meetings. And so while the family was out on the beach, I was in the hotel room cranking away. And then if I wasn't in the hotel room, I was off somewhere off site meeting with people. And I just didn't have enough time to drive up to Orlando because from St. Pete to Orlando, it's what, like an hour and a half, 2 hours?
Yeah, I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the ones where
Oh.
you were, like, down the street, like, at the hotel, and you're like, "Oh, no, I got, better things to do." It's just No,
Yeah,
I
yeah. It's crazy. So I will tell you this. Usually when I'm out in Orlando, I'm at a conference called the WCI conference. It's one of the largest workers' compensation conferences that I go to every year. And it's kind of a mess. It's kind of a shit show. Excuse my language. There are, 1,000 plus professionals that converge on the what is it, the World Marriott Center there, the World Center
Mhm.
Marriott in
Down
Orlando.
down the street from me. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody works really, really hard during the day. Like we go to sessions, we have meetings back to back to back to back. And then in the evening, it turns into a bit of a mess. Like
Yeah.
to give you an idea, in this week, when we are in town, the World Center Marriott sells as much alcohol during those few days that we're there. We're there for like 3 or 4 days as it does the remainder of the year. So it gives you an idea of how much people love to drink at this conference. And, sometimes I've been guilty of overindulging when I call you and I'm like, I can't make it because I'm like borderline debilitated. And
Yeah.
true,
No,
in all
I mean,
honesty, I mean, that's just kind of how the ball
no,
bounces sometimes.
I just giving you a hard I kid, I kid. I'm just giving you a hard time because I understand that. That it just happens that way. But this weekend, we're getting it in, man, and we're gonna so we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna do us two against Joe LeBeau, and we're gonna get him back.
Oh, it's a rematch.
It's a
Nice.
rematch, man. We're gonna do it, and like I'll let everybody know how bad we beat him this time. So,
Dude,
um,
last time it was kind of whack. It was kind of whack because we were ahead the whole day. and then we just kind of fell apart in the last
Yeah,
couple of holes. But
we did.
I was so tired, dude. I didn't eat breakfast that day. So this time around, I'm going to be well nourished. I'm going to be well rested so that we can put those guys in their place. They definitely what was that guy's name from this last basketball game, that the guy's dad that went up to Giannis? Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
So the Bucks were playing the Pacers in the playoffs, and I think that what is the guy's last name on the Pacers team? Anyway, one of their star players, the Pacers beat the Bucks. The Pacers player's dad comes onto the court after the game from the stands, has a towel with his son's face on it, and is waving it in front of Giannis like being a real sore winner. And he's like, "That's how we effing do it. That's how we do it." He's like getting in Giannis' face. I kind of feel like Joe and LeBeau did us dirty like that last time. They were
Oh,
getting in our face about it, man. What's up with that?
dude, yeah, we'll have our day. Just say that, and with no mercy for LeBeau's birthday. That's all I gotta say.
Dude, it's gonna be so much fun. So to cut to the chase, we're doing a surprise um, visit from Vince, right, on Sunday to go and take LeBeau golfing for his birthday. But then after that, right, his family is planning an all out surprise birthday party for him, which is going to be incredible.
Yeah.
I have been the fair recipient of one surprise birthday party in my life. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
You actually planned the only surprise birthday party that I ever had in my life. You don't remember that? At
Dude,
your
what?
apartment at the Breakers? Or did I dream
Oh,
that up?
no, 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 no. You're right. You're bringing up see, that's what I like about this, because we're gonna bring up each other's memories that you're gonna be like, no way that happened. But yeah, I do remember that now. That was a blast.
Dude,
That
that was
was
so much fun. It's never, nobody's ever replicated that ever again. And I'll tell you, that is definitely a highlight for me. So I'm hoping that our boy LeBeau feels the same way, that on his
yeah,
50th birthday, he feels cared for and cherished enough that, his family would go out of their way, and that one of his best friends would go out of his way to come all the way from Florida to Colorado just for him, man, for a special day. So, kudos to you, and hopefully he feels love through all of this.
yeah. And so I'm gonna pick him up at like 6:30 in the morning. He doesn't know. Jen's just telling him that, hey, I'm getting a car for you to take you to the golf course, and I'm gonna pull up in a vehicle, and we're gonna roll over, and then I'm gonna have to. Me and you're gonna have to kick his butt. You know.
Dude, I almost feel like you need to set up some sort of GoPro in the car so you film his reaction when he sees you. Because
I'll
that's gonna be awesome, dude. When he
I'll
gets in the car,
I'll
he's gonna be,
I'll
what
definitely
the?
record it. I'll definitely record it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, man. So yeah, it's kind of what we got going on right now. But um, I your name comes up a lot in these podcasts, because I know you so well, and I know a lot of the things that you've gone through, or even where you've come now to where you started out. It it always amazes me, the perseverance, the dedication to constantly growing yourself. I admire it a lot for you, and I look at it back. We go back to when we were like starting out, first meeting each other. And dude, you're like one of those people. I remember exactly what you were wearing. You're wearing these like this black shirt, and it like had like a flip over thing with a gray. I don't know. It was kind of a, a weird sweater kind of like thing, and black pants, and you were all in all black. And dude, you look so angry all the time. Like, man, like you like, dude, don't mess with me or we're gonna go. That was like your look on you all the time. And
Dude,
I don't know if it was from like, I just don't know anybody, and I'm gonna let everybody know that I'm not gonna be messed with, or what was it? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. And actually it was very intimidating. I don't know, how many people that watch your podcast actually have known me for a while, but for those of you that haven't had the opportunity to meet me and hear my life story, my family migrated from Mexico, when I was 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. And so as you can imagine, my first language was Spanish. And so coming to a brand new country, brand new environment, not being able to speak the language, not being able to communicate well or even at all was very intimidating. I don't think now, unless you've ever traveled to like a foreign country where they don't speak any English, which quite frankly, right, there isn't a country out there where they don't speak English anymore. But back in the day, there was no ESL, there was no English as a second language. They didn't have programs to help assimilate young kids into American culture. Back then, you either swam or sunk, right? Those were your options. And so I feel like I walked around a lot of times confused as a kid, angry because I didn't know what was going on and it was frustrating. And of course, as you can imagine, what's more frustrating than trying to communicate with people, but you can't? You can't get
Yeah.
across the points that you're trying to get across. And so oftentimes I did have this scowl look on my face
Dude,
of frustration, of anger. And, part of it too was, self-preservation, right? So you walk around, you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes you don't know if somebody's out to hurt you. And it's just primal instinct, right? You try and protect yourself. You try and be um, unvulnerable, right? And so you develop this exterior that sometimes comes across as cold or angry or mean, when really all you're trying to do is protect yourself. You're just trying
yeah.
to, exist and survive.
Yeah, and so you came over, your mom, as a single mother with your 2 brothers and your sister, right? Is that it was just the 4 of you, that she had, right?
Yeah, so I have 4 siblings total. Yep, 4 siblings, 2 older brothers, a sister, an older sister, and then 1 other brother they're all older than me, but my 2 brothers were
Oh, yeah,
were
yeah,
even
yeah, I'm
older than the
sorry.
rest of us.
Your brother, because and I feel like, so your mom came over, um, we and it's something that we've talked, and I don't know, we kid about nobody listened to Kings of Monaco, but, you know, I and so I say, and I don't wanna feel like I'm repeating myself or you are, but, you it was and that was another thing is, like, the strength of your mom to come over as a single mom, because how old were your brothers at the time? Because they were, like, in middle school. Your oldest brother had to be, like, in middle school or high school?
Well, when we first got here, he was probably just heading into middle school. My sister was heading out of middle school into high school, and my 2 oldest brothers were out in the workforce already. And really, by the grace of God, we were only able to come into the US legally because of my older brothers who, went through the immigration process, were able to get our green card squared away with the US government, with customs, and then we are all able to cross over into the U.S. legally, which in hindsight was an incredible privilege for us. Right, we didn't have to. Um, we didn't ever spend a moment in the U.S. being illegal, but that doesn't change the fact that my mother coming from Mexico, having a maybe third grade education, she married extremely young. I saw your
Mm,
your last podcast with Anna, and, my mother married when she was probably 13 years old, 14 years old, right
yeah,
around the same time. And I'll tell you what, man, when you have that type of transition in your life, there's a lot of emotional and intellectual growth that doesn't happen as a result, right? Because you're busy being a housewife, you're busy. My mother actually was pregnant very quickly after they got married, and so had my brother very, very young, extremely young. And so your focus then turns from, being a kid, playing, being jovial, being educated, to now being a parent, right? Taking care
yeah.
of your child, taking care of the house. And so her development was really stunted as a result, but she came to the US on a third grade education. She worked multiple jobs at a time. I never heard my mother complain. She wasn't somebody that looked for handouts. She wasn't somebody that asked for help. If we needed something, she made it happen. I'll tell you a
Mhm.
story. When I was probably 7 or 8 years old, of course, this was in the heyday of He-Man, right? He-Man was all the rage when we were kids, and the power of Grayskull, right? And we all
Yeah.
wanted the figurines. Well, naturally, we didn't have any money, and being the kid that I am, being a persistent whiner, I generally got what I wanted as a kid. And so one day we were at the store, I think it was like Kmart or something like that. Maybe it was Kmart. And man, I really wanted this battle cat, this, the
Yeah.
He-Man's tiger pet
Yep.
or tiger friend. And of course, my mother didn't have money. And man, I must have cried more than I've ever cried in my life in the store. Um, we walk out of the store. I was distraught that I could not have Battle Cat as a toy. I turn around, I turn back around. My mother hands me Battle Cat. Now, I can tell you in all honesty, and by the way, she passed away 13 years ago, going on 14. I can tell you that she didn't have money to buy that Battle Cat, but she did what she felt she had to do to provide for her child a toy that she thought would bring me happiness. Now, I'm not suggesting or condoning that anybody go shoplift or go do something illegal to please their children, but it goes to show how incredibly devoted my mom was to my personal happiness, right? And we've talked in other episodes about how that love and that affection and that passion to make me, her child, happy wasn't always healthy for me growing up, right? I developed some really bad habits, some really bad um, behaviors as a result. But I'll tell you, man, when I look back at my mom when I was a kid, all I can think of was the fact that she always put us first. She always put me first. And she really put herself in some really difficult positions to make sure that she provided for her children, and I'll always cherish that in my heart, man.
Yeah.
She, was definitely mom and dad for me. I never told you this, or maybe I did tell you this. I used to give her both Mother's Day cards and Father's Day cards because she was truly, both roles in my life. And
Yeah.
while I had mentorship and guidance from other, powerful men in my life, some you and I share, influences from, she was always my rock. She was always my constant in my life. I never had to worry about her being gone. I never had to worry about her saying no or being there for me. I took a great deal of pride as I got older and as she got older, and I started making a little bit of money. We would go shopping together, and I remember she would ask me for little things, like, Mijo, do you mind if I buy this blouse? Is that okay? Of course, mom. Oh man, I used to love spoiling her towards, the latter days of her life, because it was the least I could do for all the sacrifices that she, endured when I was a kid, man. So I had a great childhood, and I'll tell you what, that's definitely a shining moment in my life, was just having that mother, that saintly figure in my life, always looking out for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know that like you said, your two older brothers, I'm sure like when they came over, they were like foot to ground. They were always busy. And so and they had their own families, right? They were starting their own families.
They did, yeah. So my eldest brother, Gerardo, Uncle Jerry, as he likes to be called
Yeah.
affectionately, he's the Uncle Bob of the family from La Bamba. He was the paternal figure in our family. He was the one that made sure that we were protected. Um, and gosh, I'll tell you what, man, we have had story time, he and I, on a couple of different occasions, and he's painted a very vivid picture of what it was like for him and my other brother, Greg, who passed away from COVID. God rest his soul. And what it was like for them to come to the US, also legally. My father, who wasn't around during my childhood, was actually able to get the two of them green cards to bring them over to start working and really help provide for the family that he left behind, which was kind of ironic. But he shares stories with me about when they moved over here, they were definitely in their teenagers. Greg, I think, was probably 14, 15. So he was pulled out of school. He was going into high school to move here to the US to start working. Jerry was probably, 17 or 18, maybe 19, a little bit older, but still a kid himself, really took on this crazy heavy burden of providing for a family. So they both move to the US, they start working, they finally accumulate enough money, right, to go back to get the rest of the family, to get me, to get my mom, to get my brother, and to get my sister. And then they also brought to the US their girlfriends, which ended up being their wives that they lived, they were married their entire lives. And so they went and picked them up. And my brother Jerry shares this story of when they were kids, they would go to work. And they would go uh, to go to work at like a farm place. It was an agriculture place. He recalls, going to work, and my brother Greg, who was second oldest, the younger teenager, would fall asleep because he would just get so tired. Can you imagine being 14 years old, having a full-time job, working alongside grown men, right, for 40 hours a week? Like, that's a lot to ask for a kid, right, that has never done that in his life. And so Jerry recalls Greg falling asleep at times, and Jerry really looking out for him, like, man, if the boss finds him sleeping, he's going to fire him. He's not going to be able to provide for himself. So he'd wake him up. Hey, buddy, you got to wake up, man. You got to wake up. And it paints this picture of this, again, the sacrifice and um, the things that they had to endure just to be able to provide, right, for the people that they loved. It's a lot, bro. Even now, as I think about, the lifestyle that I'm able to live, the lifestyle that my children are able to live, in all honesty, man, if I had to do the things that they had to do to get to where they are today, I don't know that I can do it.
Yeah.
Maybe I could. I'd like to think that, if need came knocking on my door, I would be a survivor like them. But you talk about perseverance, you talk about character, you talk about sacrifice. Man, I cannot think of anything more exemplary than those two boys. They grew up literally being my heroes, that I didn't recognize until I got older, right? As a kid, they're your brothers. You don't really admire them the way that you admire them as you get older. But now in hindsight, man, it's like they really are my heroes. If it wasn't for them, I truly, truly, and I mean this wholeheartedly, I don't think that I would have accomplished nearly the things that I've accomplished in my life. And so I'm really grateful for them. But yeah, my family's, they've gone through a lot to get to where they are. And I'm extremely grateful for it.
Yeah, and I think that through them, and then your other brother, who was he's like 2 or 3 years older than you, right? um I guess there was I that's a great dynamic thing. Even I find, and I don't know, I don't want to say it's Latino families, but I do find Latino families do tend to, like, when it's like that pack mentality, like we're gonna really take care of each other, and they truly did that. It was like, they with they realized the absence of your father was kind of their, I don't even want to say burden, because I don't, it's like I don't even think they seen it as that. They just like, this is my family, this is what we need to do. And your mother was amazing in saying, well, I'm not gonna have my sons, just work. She's like, I'm gonna put in my work also. So it was a cool, your dynamic of your family was, it was so cool to see. And I would say we don't see it as kids, but you look back at it now and you're like, wow, that was really amazing, the way they came together as a family and the things they did. And when you don't see that, like, yeah, we didn't have much, financially or economically. We weren't like, you know, at we were economically, like, you guys were challenged at the time, and but it's like you don't feel it because the love and the pact that you guys have created, as a family.
Yeah, it's so funny. So as a kid, I never really felt poor. I never really felt like I lacked anything up until, probably my fourth or fifth year in elementary school. But, before that, I lived a very fulfilled life. I felt like I had a happy childhood, even though there were difficult changes that we had to go through, like moving to the U.S., learning a new language, getting to know totally different culture. That's tough to do for a little kid. Um, but I still feel like I had a really good childhood. In fact, I would go as far as to say that because of my older brothers being so present in my life and our family being so close together, I mean, we spent a ton of time together. Every weekend, my brothers would come over, to mom's little trailer. We'd get together. Mom would make menudo. They were sometimes hungover from partying, so they would come over and hang out and just talk about what was going on during that weekend. And it was that presence that really, quite honestly, I never missed my dad not being around. I never really missed that influence in my life because I know that my family was there, my brothers were there, my mother was there, my sister was there. We all loved each other. We were there for each other. And it was a very strong family unit. You're absolutely right, man. When push came to shove, that was one thing that I think came to us innately, and that was to huddle together, right? Come together and be there for one another. If it wasn't for that unity, I think that my life would be completely different today.
Yeah.
Absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt. I wouldn't have the confidence I have today, which sometimes, some people would say is over the line, but whatever. I mean, to each his own. I certainly wouldn't have this sense of security, right, in life. It was if it wasn't for my brothers, my sister, and my mother being a constant in my life. And it's interesting how even through these tumultuous times, through these crazy times that you experience, right, of poverty, of violence. I'll tell you, man, I've seen my brothers get into some pretty serious fights over the years when I was younger. Not so much anymore. They're older. They're very mature men, very dignified men these days. But when we were kids, man, and they used to party, they were, I don't want to say that they were troublemakers, but they never backed down from a fight.
Yeah.
And I saw some pretty gruesome stuff and really grew up knowing that if you don't defend yourself, if you don't step up for yourself, which they often did for them and others, you're going to become a doormat for people. And that was an important lesson for me to learn as a young man as well from them, right? That, man, you can't be a pushover in these environments. You got to be tough. And maybe that's where that look came from that you saw, because I
Dude, you
didn't
were
want to be that
scowling all the
doormat.
time. Dude, you were scowling all the time, and I was like, man, this guy doesn't like me. But now looking at it, you understand. You're like, man, he's just, it's a guard that you put up, because you don't want to let people know that there's any weakness in anything, and at the time, yeah, your weakness was just learning the adapting to the culture, adapting to the language, and getting that all, which, I mean, over the years, it's like we wonder if you even speak Spanish now, because
Well, it's funny you say
yeah,
that, dude. So, as a kid, I vividly remember thinking in Spanish, interpreting, and then speaking in English. Today, it's totally backwards, man. I think in English and translate to Spanish, and then I speak it in which is
that's funny.
nuts, right? So, it just, it's a byproduct of my life. My wife is Anglo. She doesn't speak Spanish. My children don't speak Spanish. I mean, they try, they speak a little bit of Spanish. My elder children, my 20-year-old and 23-year-old, 22-year-old, speak a little bit of Spanish, but they're always hounding me about how I didn't teach them Spanish. I just wasn't, I wasn't around it as much as I became an older adult because everybody around me spoke English, right? So
Yeah,
naturally, your brain just kind of flips a switch.
not only that, you're trying to adapt, and you're like make a name for yourself, without like people thinking, oh, it's just Mexican kid, that doesn't speak. And like I said, um I feel like you adapted pretty quick. It was like within a year you were like, oh, okay, he speaks the language good, so um that I'd never seen that as
I've told
uh
this story before, and I think you remember this. I actually learned the roots of my English through Sesame Street by watching,
yeah,
public programming. And man, I'll tell you, if it wasn't for PBS and their public programming, I don't know that my English would have been as good. But I remember, Vince, when I was when we lived out in Swansea before I met you guys, we had just moved from Mexico. I went to Swansea Elementary School. I think it was second grade. And I remember my mom telling me as I got older that I would get ready for school and I would just be this happy little kid. I would be so excited to go to school. And it makes sense, right? Because I actually am a pretty extroverted guy. Like I enjoy socializing, I enjoy meeting new people. That brings me energy, as opposed to someone who's introverted who gets their energy sucked out of them whenever they have to talk to somebody that they don't know.
yeah,
But my mom talks about how I'd get up in the morning and I'd go under the sink and I'd wash off my hair. And she described it as like a little bird under the fountain, right? Like I would just shake my hair and, get it out, slick it back. And then off I was to school. And I was just as excited as can be, not speaking English, not knowing the culture, not having any friends, but I was just excited for whatever adventures lied ahead. And I think, again, that was a byproduct of just that security that I had at home, just knowing that there was nothing in this world that can harm me, right? I was ready for the excitement. I was ready for the adventure, man. And I think that played a lot into me being able to pick up the language quickly. I wasn't afraid to be embarrassed for speaking it wrong. I wasn't afraid for making mistakes. I mean, you guys teased me as a kid. I remember not knowing all the right words, and you guys would tease me about not knowing the right words, but even that taught me, right? It taught me the right words and what words that I should be using. But part of it was because I was so secure in myself. I just wasn't afraid to make a mistake, and that really helped
yeah,
me pick up the language pretty quickly.
yeah. As that what's his name, as George Lopez says, that's how you learn.
Speaking of George Lopez, dude, a lot of people say that I look like him. I don't know if that's true or not, but
Well, not now. He looks like an old elderly Spanish woman now. Either that or a Mexican Einstein.
he looks like an abuelita now. That's
Dude.
hilarious, dude. But
He
when
actually,
people tell me, when they're like, you look like George Lopez, I'm like, bro, that's not a compliment. I don't feel complimented by you right now. Can you pick
dude,
somebody else, another Latino actor
I
that I look
know.
like? Man.
Can you say Enrique Iglesias at least or something?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, man. So, you know, we go through and um I I talked to Joe about us, really cuz I felt like m- music to me was always really natural because my father, my grandfather, I was always around it. I'd watch them play. They would be playing music in the living room, like a lot of Spanish families do, and um, they, with accordions and guitars, and I was always amazed by it. And my uncle, like a lot of people in my family, played music, so and Joe was the same way. His father played music, and we always that was kind of always a part of my life. And I want to get into kind of where we kind of started what later on in our life, but what ho- what was the first point of you just like, man, I really like music and I could actually do this? Was it in middle school in band?
It was in band. Actually, I was a band geek ever since I was in fourth grade. I don't know if you remember, Monaco had a band program,
Mm-hmm.
and they had instruments for kids that couldn't afford to buy instruments. I think you and Joe had your own instruments. You guys bought, I think you played the saxophone at one point, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Joe, I think, played the trumpet at one
Trumpet.
point.
Yep.
And I had to borrow a tenor saxophone from the school. And I remember having to walk with that huge case home, man. And I lived, what? I don't know. Would you say maybe a half mile from the school?
Dude,
I don't
I
know.
remember that.
It
Yeah,
was a ways, right? That I had to walk every single day. I mean, we didn't
yeah.
really have buses from Monaco in that
Yeah,
direction.
it was a tenor sax, right?
It
That
was a tenor, yeah,
yeah.
and so it was a bigger case, and so I vividly remember, of course, living in Colorado, you gotta deal with the snowstorms, right? And so I remember there were times where, man, I would dread going to school because I had this freaking tenor sax that I had to carry back and forth. Guess who would come through in the pinch? My mother. So she would actually take time out of her job to carry the saxophone for me. Now, in hindsight, that's not great, right? Like in hindsight, I was probably leaning on my poor mom too much, but
Dude, 5
man,
foot nothing, 100 and
she
nothing.
was tiny. She was tiny. She would pick up the saxophone. Vámonos, mijo, let's go. We'd be walking through that snow, man, trudging through that snow. And listen, we didn't have money to go to REI and buy the snow gear, right? We were
Mhm.
in tennis shoes, and at times I'd get to the school, man, my feet were numb because we were walking through all that snow, hauling this big freaking tenor saxophone. And I'll tell you though, man, I really enjoyed music all the way through and through. My family, they were very musical. I have an uncle that sings and plays guitar. My brother Jerry actually has a beautiful voice, dude. He honestly could have been a mariachi singer. That
I
guy
remember
can
him
sing.
singing. Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
hearing him
he
sing.
he can sing. He's got great pitch, great, great tone. Um, and so music was always a part of our home, right? There was always music playing, and I loved it. So when I got into band, it was a natural extension of who I was, and I stayed in band all the way up until I graduated high school. But w- when I found out, like, man, I really want to do music, it was probably my freshman year in high school. When you start to really want to explore who you're going to be, as you start to define what your identity is going to be, right? And that generally happens for little boys anyway, right around the freshman year in high school. And at the time, of course, there was the whole influence of little girls, right? So we used to write poems to little girls. And then we got really heavily involved into the hip hop scene because, of course, we lived in an urban community, right? So, of
Yeah,
course, hip hop was a very big part of it. And so, really, it was in ninth grade when I like really found that bug, when I caught that bug for writing, for exploring. We used to make mixtapes, right, with the tapes, like start and stop at the right
yeah,
time, and make these cool uh, uh, mashup beats even before mashup was a thing, which was
yeah.
awesome. But that was really the birth of my passion for creating music and not just being a listener of it.
Yeah, and dude, talking about, like, one of the better times, and I mean, I've had a lot of highlights in my life. I I consider myself extremely blessed, God has taken care of me in my life with
Yeah.
even through my hard times, I've always seemed to be able to have a recovery because God has taken care of that for me. And but man, talking about a highlight of when we started God's new creation, and I told Joe, talked to Joe about it, about how you guys were first initially starting the group. And do you remember the time where you guys invited me out and you're like, "Hey, come check out the group. We're gonna do a youth." It was just a youth rally or something. And dude, I saw you guys perform, and I'm like, man, that's like what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I felt like, man, I want to be a part of this. And it was the pain came from inside. And dude, I was like, man, when you first started that, like, line, the cruising down the boulevard, deck to wreck, I'm like, oh, here we go. I was like one of those people. I was like, oh yeah, that's it right there. But dude, I was like, I'm telling you, man, it hooked me because for one, I grew up a Christian kid, and I'm like, wow, we could actually do like ministry and music. I was like, man, this is amazing. So, when we first started, when you first started, did you feel like it was something that could actually viably happen the way it did? Uh,
No, not at all, man. I had no idea. I had no idea of the, the heights and the incredible legacy that, we would leave behind. I'm very proud of the things that we were able to accomplish together. And I do remember that concert that we invited you to. But I'll be honest with you, man, I don't remember anything other than that without you being a part of the group. Like, I don't have many memories before that of Joe and I performing alone. I think it just speaks to the impact that you had both on me and Joe and the group collectively. Um, it When you came along and you joined us with, which by the way, we weren't performing for a long time. Like, we had just started,
mhm.
and you made it whole. It was like, I don't know how to describe it, but we may have started something, but it wasn't actually it until you joined, right? It was a version of it, but it really wasn't it. Like, it wasn't God's new creation until you joined, and you joined very early on. Like, it wasn't like we were out, for years. Um, I never knew the impact that we were going to have. But I will tell you, when it became real to me, when I had that aha moment with the music, was when I don't know if you remember traveling to Texas to that church convention, and Joe's brother, I forget what his name was, paid for us to do that demo of "It's Those Demons Again." And I
Yeah,
remember playing that song in somebody's car at this church convention in Texas. People were going nuts over it. Like, they couldn't like get enough of it. We kept playing over and over and over because people loved it. And that was really when I was like, holy crap, like, this could be something, right? Like, if we really applied ourselves and really um explored the art form, wrote about some cool stuff, our experiences, man, it could have a real impact on our peers, on the kids that, we're seeing at these youth rallies. And that was a big aha moment for me. But prior to that, I had no idea. Did I ever think we were going to get signed to a record deal? Never. Did I ever think we were going to go on tour? Never. Did I ever think we were going to be playing co-headlining with, Petra's frontman, with um, Out of Eden, with all of these, right, CCM artists that were out there at the time? Never. I would have never thought that. And really, it was all in God's time, right? And it was all God's will for it to happen. But I never thought about it. It was certainly always something that I was passionate about. I never did it to 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 want to be famous, so to speak. But it would have been nice, right? It would have been nice to cash a $10 million check for the music, but it was never the driving force behind us doing it.
yeah, dude, it was that I felt like it was a genuine, and the authenticity of the ministry at the time was what kept it going. And us just I think that's for any artist who is even listening to this, if starting out or whatever, is being genuine to what you're doing, loving what you're doing, and not like trying to chase now a viral moment or anything like
Mhm.
that, because it's just about loving what you're doing and loving the um im- impact of what the words you say, or the the way you make people feel through your music, because that was the biggest part. Because I think my aha moment was when we uh we went out to Arizona and we were touring, and we had a show with T-Bone. Do you remember
Yeah,
that
yeah.
big show we had with
It
T-Bone?
was a
And
convention center, yeah.
dude, it was like the crowd was ridiculous, and the response to was, and it was we felt bad because like we got off the show. We were opening for T-Bone. We got done and we were going out to do like just sign merch if anybody want. Dude, like a lot of the people were left out of the show to come get product to come meet us, and I was like, man, it's this is crazy. I that was like one of those times where I'm like, man, this is for real. You know, we're actually
Yeah.
doing something. But
Do
yeah,
you remember when we were in South Dakota? We played at the show, and I want to say that it was at a Catholic church, or maybe it was North Dakota. I can't remember. One of the Dakotas. And we played that song, "Letter to Mom and Dad," that you wrote, which I love, by the way. It's one of my favorite songs. And we finish our set, and we go to our dressing room, and there were these girls that were hiding in our dressing room that were waiting for us in there. Do you remember that?
yeah,
That was nuts to me. That was like, in a church setting, right? Presumably these kids were Christian and they were like hiding in our dressing rooms. And it was like a validation for me, like, wow, this thing is really going somewhere, right? This thing is really happening. And it was exciting to be a part of, I would be being dishonest if I didn't say that I struggled with, the whole pride thing. Like, I do feel that at times I was a bit, too big for my britches, so to speak, because I really started feeling myself, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to these
oh, I know,
concerts, you're playing in front of 4 or 5,000 people, and you really start feeling like, damn,
yeah,
pretty good. I'm pretty good.
yeah, yeah,
So,
no,
that was certainly a lesson for me growing up too, in those times, like, man, you got to dial it back, bro. You got to stay humble. You got to be, genuine still. But it's tough to do, I'll tell you. So I can imagine what it's like when you're selling 1 million records, 2 million, 10 million records, right? And you have all of these people clamoring for your attention and really doing whatever it is that you want them to do. How you start to really drink your Kool-Aid, right? You start drinking
yeah,
your own Kool-Aid and you start filling yourself, man. That's dangerous.
yeah, and you know, with all of that, you know, we get to a certain point, and um, you know, we all of us had like starting off, we had a lot going on in our lives. We started there was a lot of moving pieces to all of our lives, you know, and so it was like one of those things, like with any band that starts, they start filming themselves, or th there's like, well, we should be doing this, or we our own ideals become the greatest ideals, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think at the time, you know, when we kind of separated, went our own ways as a group, you know, it was like one of those things where we were like, uh, you know, maybe it's time to move forward and kind of do our own thing. You know, Joe was um I he was getting more of starting more of the pastorship of his church with his dad and everything. And I was like, I talked about it with me moving forward, and I was like still wanting to produce music and everything, and did some stuff for some other artists and everything. And you were still like, man, I still want to do this, you know? And I remember our last album, and I've talked about it, you know, on Kings of Monaco, the Encounters album. And I was like, man, that's not the direction I wanted to go, you know, with so when we ended up writing your album, the Carlos Alberto album, it was like, man, it was everything I wanted to do, because you're like, dude, produce something like you wanted to sound original, but you wanted to sound like you still, you know, what we already
Hmm.
built on. And so like having that and being able to, because that was the your album was the GNC album I really wanted, you know, the God's New Creation album I really wanted.
I could see
And
that. Yeah.
I was like, it was so exciting to writing that with you. Um I mean, was did it feel like kind of a continuation project for you for in that way also? Do you think so?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely made a lot of sense to me. The sound, that we ended up developing for it. And it honestly, man, it's a solid project. Like if you listen to it today, it's got
Yeah,
some solid music on it. It's got some solid lyrics to it. Like it's actually a really good record.
dude, I
And
still love dude, I'll listen to that, like, any day, every day over the Encounters album. It's
yeah,
like,
I know.
dude, I
I
love
know. I feel the same way. You know, Encounters got some pretty cool jams on it.
yeah,
Like I like El Viento. That's actually a really
yeah,
cool song that I like. I like Magic on it. That's really good. I love Letter to Mom and Dad. That's a really good song. But you're absolutely right, dude. The sound that you crafted, and I'll give you full credit for it. You produced it. You crafted the sound for the Carlos Alberto Sunshine album, which is on YouTube still. If you look it up,
yeah,
it's up on YouTube. But the sound that you crafted for it was definitely the GNC sound. It definitely was like the legacy candle sound. You know what I'm saying? It was like
yeah,
that was our DNA. And when I say our DNA, it was really your DNA because you were producing it, right? Joe and I were the writers. You were more on the production side and the sound side. And I love it, man. It's you could always tell a good record by how well it weathers throughout time. You know how well it ages. And that record, man, like I said, I still, when I listen to those songs, it's like they're really good songs still, man. They
oh,
aged
yeah.
well, dude.
Dude, I still show people the music and they're like, "Wow, that's pretty good. You did that?" Or like, that's your boy?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it was a fun project." And we actually got to I actually got to go perform with you, and because you're like, "Dude, might as well come out and, sing," because I sang some vocals on that album. So you're like, "Dude, come along," and we were actually going with the full band and everything, which was really
Yeah,
fun.
man. Well, we got to play the Denver Coliseum. We got to play what was it? Not Six Flags, Knott's Berry Farm out in California. We got to play a lot of really cool venues, with that record. And every time we played, man, the songs brought to people to the front. You know what I'm saying? The
Dude,
people
it
were
was
ready to get down when those songs came on. And shoot, bro, without, or at the risk of making you, filling your head with hot air, man, those beats were fire. They brought people to the yard for
Yeah,
sure.
it
And
was just fun. It
it was
it goes
dope.
to it goes to show you when you enjoy something and it's truly something that you put your heart into and the enjoyment of it, it ends up showing itself, you know? That's what I'm telling for young artists. It's like don't try and don't try and mimic, to
Yeah.
fulfill a viral moment. Like if you're good at something, just do it and
Yeah.
uh just do it in that way because it'll come out and it'll convey through your beats, music, voice, whatever, and I've always enjoyed that about people who've done that. And I always felt like I knew who your influences were in music, but I never felt like you were trying to mimic. You just kind of created your own voice through everything. So
Gen- Genuineness, authenticness, honesty, in my opinion, is the root for true creativity. You can't call yourself creative if you're trying to sound like somebody or trying to look like somebody. That's not creative. That's, you're a carbon copy of somebody else. So when you're being honest, when you're writing something and you're working on a project, if your heart and soul isn't in it, man, it's not worth putting out. My
yeah,
my eldest son, 22, lives in LA pursuing, or child, I should say, non-binary child, is pursuing a career in music. I give them that advice all day long. You know what? Be honest in your music. And they have written some bangers, bro. Like
yeah,
this kid is going to go places. Um, but if you don't have that authenticity in your work, which you always did, bro, when you wrote that song, Mom and Dad, that was your heart and soul, dude. Like you poured it out. You know what I'm saying? That's what makes a good song. And it's that heart and that soul that connects with people where they are. It's not, the slick rhymes. It's not the complex rhyme schemes. It's not even, the perfect pitch. People go overboard with auto tune these days. It's the authenticity. It's the moment. When you listen to like Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill, she's got a ton of flat notes in there, dude. A
Oh yeah.
ton. But they leave them in because the moment, the raw emotion that is captured through that note or through that riff is authentic. And that's why records like that end up being so viral, because they connect with people at a deeper level than just the audio level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel
Yeah.
like we accomplished that on a number of songs, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the fact that we wrote some stuff that was very honest. Um, we wrote some stuff about our experiences in growing up in urban America. We wrote some stuff about our experiences with girls, right? With little girls at the time. I say little, but we were like late
Yeah.
teenagers, maybe early
Teen
20s.
teens,
Um,
yeah.
we wrote songs about that. We wrote songs about our challenges, the difficulties that we were going through in life. The pain came from inside is a lament, bro. It's like lamentations for the 1990s, for the early 2000s.
Yeah.
um, they were honest songs, bro. We wrote, the future belongs to those who prepare for them, the night that one of our friends died in a car accident, right?
Yeah.
Like, those
Yep.
were honest songs that you can't get any more authentic than that. And I feel like the kids that we grew up with, the kids that we were able to perform in front of, the kids that we were able to minister to, really were able to connect with that authenticity that we're able to put in those songs, man. I'm very proud of the work that we put in.
So I'm gonna talk about authenticity because I think because we're jerks as friends. That's the way but and we'll give you a hard time all because we call you Mr. Businessman now because because you think about where you started from, like not speaking the language to kind of being this like hip hop artist almost to where you had like this street vibe to you and to where you're at now. And we give you Mr. Businessman, where's the hood? And it's funny because I think a lot of people get stuck in this mindset of like, oh, I gotta be true to my hood or whatever. But I don't look at it that way as much crap as I talk. I look at it as throughout the years, you've transformed yourself and there's been self-growth along the way and knowing where you wanted to take yourself with through the music, through what you're doing now, and been able to kind of transform yourself into the person that you've always stayed the same with your confidence, your um, self-awareness, and knowing like this is who I want to be and how am I going to get there? How am I going to direct myself to be there? So I do believe in where you've taken yourself. It's been authentic, um, regardless of us talking trash about and saying we. I mean, it's funny. It's almost um it, it's almost offensive sometimes when we talk trash to each other, but that's
Are you
what we
even
do.
doing it right if it's not offensive? I
I
know,
know,
man.
but dude, I appreciate that because we're talking about moving forward, moving, and this podcast is on to the next. And you're like, your name comes up a lot because you've been able to move on to your next through a lot of these things, through like I said, through elementary, through middle to your music to where you're at now, and now you have a beautiful family and you're like I need to be a provider. How do I want to be a provider? I want to be in the world of business. I want to be a leader in the business world. And how do you carry yourself in that world of business? You've kind of people talk about learning certain traits and following certain traits and adapting, and you've done a really good job. Like I said, when you were a kid, you adapted pretty quick. When you came into the school, you were able to adapt to the culture, to the language, and then in the hip hop culture, because that wasn't part of your childhood, but you're like, man, I love this. I want to be a part of it. You adapted to it because you're like, I know I could do this. This is, but it was part of who you were because we were in the inner city, and you're like, man, this is who I am, and you adapted to it, and you like made it yours, you know? And now in the world of business, you're able to do the same thing. And I find it amazing, man, that you've been able to kind of transform to all these parts in your life, and you're truly like, you know, a part of me saying, you know, being able to move on to your next, you know,
Mm.
and taking that and actually, you know, succeeding with it. And I kind of want you to talk about how, you know, like now moving to where you're at now, how like a lot of those things, how they've kind of carried you to where you're at now and being able to be who you are now.
Well, I appreciate that, bro. First of all, I'm super touched that you see me in that light, man. Just coming from you, it means a lot. I care about you a lot, and I care about your opinion a lot. So thank you
I'll
for
I'll
that.
say I'll say something to deflate you here soon. So 'cause-
Yeah, the shoe's gonna drop here pretty soon.
yeah,
Don't get too happy, boy. That's funny.
yeah,
I'll tell you, man, I have been very blessed in my life to have individuals that have seen things in me that I wasn't able to see in myself. Um, Starting from, you know, when I was a kid, my mother saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and that was, a capable, strong person. She believed in me. My brothers believed in me. That carried through, to being with you guys. I mean, you guys, even though you were jerks at times, you saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. You guys really encouraged me when nothing else would. Um, in one of my songs, I actually wrote that I battled with depression as a teenager, and that's the honest to goodness truth, man. Like, I experienced depression when I didn't even know what to call it.
yeah,
Um, but you guys were able to lift me up. I talk about how all I had was Joe and Vicente. All I had was you guys to pick me up and to encourage me. You guys saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. And, I had some incredible men, Joe's dad being one of them, that poured into me, that mentored me, that encouraged me, that held me accountable, that, you know, there was a time when I ran away from home because I was so angry, man. Me and I can't remember who I got in a fight with. It was one of my siblings, and I just ran out. And this was when I was probably, we lived in the little trailer. So we were probably in high school. I ran out. It was in the rain. I remember vividly. It was like in the rain. Joe's dad, my mom called Joe's dad to see if I was at Joe's house. And at the time, we lived several miles away from each other. We
mhm,
lived on opposite sides of town. And she called Joe's dad to see if I was there, and he found out that I had left, that I ran out, right, in anger and frustration in the rain. He jumped in his church van and he drove out to find me. And I remember he brought me back to the house, and my oldest brother Jerry, in his tank top, his white tank top, right? We call them wife beaters at the time.
yeah,
I know it's not politically correct, and that's not what we call them today, but that's what we called them back then, as ignorant kids. And he jumps out of my mom's trailer because he was angry that I had run away, and he was angry that Joe's dad had gone out to get me. I don't know why. And he started yelling at Joe's dad, and he told him something like, "You're not welcome here. Don't come back here again." That next Sunday, Joe's dad showed up to pick me up for church. Um, so it was people like that in my life that really saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, that took me under their wing. I remember going to school, and I got my first corporate job at a place called Wild Oats Markets. I don't know if you remember it. It was actually acquired by Whole Foods and,
yep,
totally assimilated. And there was a man there, an executive that I worked for, that again saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. He taught me all about business, all about managing people, all about national programs, all about, the business world that I had never been exposed to. And I caught the bug then. I mean, that's really when my ambition for bigger and better things in the business world started. And after that, I started to seek out these mentoring opportunities from people. Um, to today, I'm a business owner now. I own numerous businesses that do really well in the insurance and workers' compensation space. But I'll tell you, man, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish any of that if it wasn't for people like yourself, for people like Joe's dad, for people like another pastor that I had the privilege of knowing. His name was Richard Vetta, um, that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And they poured into me and really pushed me, right, emotionally to get to a different level in myself and tap into something that, honestly, if I were on my own and I hadn't known these people in my life, I never would have pursued those higher levels in my life. And here I am today, man. I've done pretty well for myself over the last 20 years and, in the insurance space. I started at the bottom, now I'm here, right? We've all heard that song, but that's truly my life's journey. I started from the bottom, at the very front office in what I do, all the way to now being the CEO of my businesses. And I really believe the best is yet to come. Anytime that I could do the same, though, for a young professional, for a young person, for a young teenager, I try and pay it forward because I really would love to see them have an experience even better than mine, right?
Yeah.
And all it takes is for you to be able to see in someone what maybe they don't see in themselves and helping them to achieve the next level of success in their own life. Um, and I am so grateful. I feel so blessed. Of course, none of this is possible. I am a very devout Christian. I do love God. I do love the scriptures. I do believe in providence. I do believe in prayer. None of those things is possible without God's grace, without God's plan for our lives, and without God putting people in our lives that we don't even know we need, right? There were a lot of times, bro, where you and Joe and LeBeau and our little clique of friends, man, you guys saved me from a lot of mental health despair that I was dealing with in my life. Because there were times where I would be conflicted, man. I'd go to church on Sunday, we would pray, we'd have these revivals, and then I would go home to a place where, my mother was a devout Catholic. She was very devout to her religion, but it wasn't like we talked about God all the time. It wasn't like we prayed together. It wasn't like we, had these spiritual moments together. Of course, having endured what she endured, there's no way she could have endured it without God's help, right? So
Yeah.
I know that she believed in God. I know that she prayed often. I know that God heard her prayers, but it was a different experience. So I would go to these mountaintop experiences right at church, and then I would come home to this place that was very different. It was hard for me to deal with, as a kid, and you guys and the people around me really helped me to tap into something that I didn't even know was there. And as you mature, as you grow older, you gain confidence and you start to understand that really, with God by your side, with people who love you by your side, man, there's nothing that you can't accomplish. Again, I'm extremely grateful for the business opportunities that I've had. I hope to someday be able to pay it back to other young professionals that are coming up in the trade. And I really try and seek them out intentionally. I really try and find people. I turned 50 in November, and I try and find people that are younger than me, right? That are up and coming, that are searching, that are passionate, that I can help and open a door for, because there were plenty of doors open for me that I couldn't have opened for myself, that I wouldn't have been able um, to reach the heights that I've been able to reach today. There was a line that I said in one of the recent podcasts that I recorded, and that is that I love to brag about myself. I love to brag about the things that I've accomplished, but it's not for the reasons that people think. It's not because I love to talk about myself for the sake of talking about myself, but I really see my accomplishments as a testament to the people that came before me, and
Mhm.
it's a way for me to remember that. It's a way for me to remember that, gosh, my mother sacrificed a lot. My brother Jerry, my brother Greg, my sister Soyla, my brother Jose, they sacrificed a lot so that I can be where I am today. And when I talk about the success that I've had, when I talk about the records that I've been able to put out, when I talk about the businesses that I've been able to start, maintain, and make thrive, I talk about their greatness. I talk about their success in my life. I talk about the success that you've had in my life. I talk about the influence that these pastors have had in my life, all because you acknowledge, right, the successes that you've been able to accomplish. For that, I'm never going to apologize. You know, whether it rubs people the wrong way or not, I'm never going to apologize for bragging about the important roles that people have played in my life, man. So I
Yeah,
appreciate you giving the opportunity to talk about that.
yeah, man. And speaking of, I mean, your podcast, which is wonderful, for the business realm, for the business platform, and knowing some of the things that you've talked about, workman's comp, and some of the dealings in the corporate world. It's a great asset. Live, lead, legacy, and dude, it's a cool perspective on all of that, and some of the people you've had on have been very insightful, and giving, you know, good tips for people who have questions about why do certain things happen this way in the corporate world or the insurance world or whatever, you know. So I mean, if anybody's listening now, just being able to get over to that, if you have any questions about some of the things that have taken place in that realm, because it's been a good, there's a lot of good perspective on that too.
I appreciate
So
the plug, bro. I love to explore the stories. You know, I'm just one person with one story, right? But
yeah,
everybody has a story. I've had the privilege of talking to a CFO who unfortunately had the terrible burden of finding his child deceased from suicide.
yeah,
I've had the pleasure of speaking with a couple of ladies who have ascended to tremendous professional heights, even with having children during while in school. Everybody has a story, and I love to explore those. You have a powerful story, right? And so, Live Lead Legacy is all about that. It's about, you know, seeing what leaders look like, certainly in the workplace, but also what do those leaders look like in their community, and then what do those leaders look like at home, and is there a common thread, right? What are the characteristics that good leaders have in those three areas: at work, in their community, and at home? And I love it. It's a labor of love. We're building up the channel, so I appreciate you making a plug. Hopefully, some of your viewers will jump over to Live Lead Legacy and take a look.
yeah, man. Bro, it's been such a pleasure just being your friend, for one. I mean, we're like brothers. I mean, you know that, the band of friends we have together. It's cool even doing the podcast Kings of Monaco with each other, and always having that conversation with each other. And I'm looking forward to seeing you this weekend. We're gonna have a great time. We're gonna kick those guys' butts at a round of
Yeah.
golf. And dude, thanks so much for being the designated hitter, because LeBeau didn't.
What a
Because,
jerk.
but man, this means so much. You coming on here, because I in this podcast I wanted to really start, because I know so many good people in my life, and I wanted to start out with kind of the inner circle of who I know, because there's so many great journeys. And like I said, you've come up a lot, because I believe your growth throughout your life has been amazing and fun to watch, and a pleasure to watch you just grow. So thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on tonight. So we'll talk soon. I'll see you in a few. All right, man.
All right, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Like,